What makes a great lens?
Ooh. That's a hard question. If someone, well, I think it goes both directions. If you want,
This has actually changed for me recently. I used to like,
Ooh, what makes a great lens?
Oh, what make a great lens? It capture image. A great lens capture image. Like if the image is solid.
Recently, Sennheiser reached out to me saying that they wanted to sponsor a video around their Evolution wireless microphone system. So I thought, what better way to showcase a microphone system than to use it to ask my peers a question that has been on my mind lately. As cameras have improved over the years, getting a good-looking image has become very accessible. This leaves lenses as one of the biggest differentiating factors any photographer or video creator has at their disposal. Which got me thinking, what makes a lens great? Today, I asked 10 other people their thoughts on this question to see if I could find any consistency or lack thereof in overall opinion. At the end of this video, we will review our answers and I will give my takeaway to this question as well. Before we get into the interviews, let's break down my very simple camera and audio setup for this video. I'm using my Fujifilm X-T4 with a Sigma 18-50 f2.8 and Sennheiser's Evolution wireless system mounted on top of the camera with their handy magnetic cheese plate going into the 3.5mm input of my X-T4. For my microphone, I'm using the legendary Sennheiser MKH416 with the SKP wireless transmitter from their E&G kit. The SKP has 48 volt phantom power, so I am able to use any XLR microphone with a camera that does not natively support XLR input at all. I was also able to monitor audio through the receiver because my X-T4 does not have a headphone jack natively. This is a fairly stripped down setup. The reason I'm shooting this with my X-T4 is that I wanted to try shooting on a camera not designed for video to show you guys that you don't need a video-centric camera to take advantage of a UHF microphone system like the Evolution Wireless. Now let's go see what my fellow photo and video professionals had to say about lenses.
if someone, well, I think it goes both directions. If you're doing commercial work and you want the lens with the least amount of character, but it has the sharpest optics, it has the least amount of chromatic aberration, like everything is technically perfect. So as you're doing different styles of photography from product to portraiture, you can use that one lens for everything. But then there's other people like myself who maybe wants to use a lens as a form of artistic expression. So you actually like the imperfections, you like the vignette, you like the fact that when someone sees it, they're like, oh yeah, it's this particular lens. I can see that character in the lens. And then in a way, as an artist, it becomes a signature. People's like, oh yeah, that's that person's style and that's their lens. So I think you can go either way. If you're very technical, then you want the most technically perfect lens with the least amount of, I would say, character. And then the other people want like the dirtiest, weirdest, craziest aberration, and that becomes a signature of them. And so I see people arguing about lenses, and in the end, it's like there's no argument. There's a lens for everyone.
okay, so for you personally, which way do you lean?
Definitely lean towards character, and I actually also like it when people say a certain lens is not that good. Then I actually want to prove, like, well, in the right hands, you can make it look good. So I often avoid, like for instance, this 50mm f2.8. People are like, why didn't you get a Noct? Why didn't you get a Summilux? I like how it's just a weird looking lens. It creates conversation when people see it. And then some people are like, well, it's not that great f2.8. Then I want to show people, well, guess what? Like, I'm going to do everything that people say you can't do with this lens. I'll do it to prove to people. So to me, I actually don't really care so much about the lens as much as my intent behind why I'm using it. The one that I enjoy using the most is the 28mm Summicron version 1. Version 1 for no other reason than that's the one I own. There's the newer version that's actually technically better. And so that's my main primary lens.
So I've never been a super technical guy who looks at the corner sharpness or whatever. So I couldn't tell you from a technical point of view. I think it's just a feeling. I think it's just you use it, and for whatever reason, you keep reaching for that one. And so sometimes it might be a certain focal length. Sometimes it might be that lens and that camera combination just gives you the feeling after you've taken the shot. And there's other ones where you buy a lens or you try it and you do it once and then you just don't go to it again. And then you're like, well, maybe this one's not inspiring enough. So It's a feeling thing for me, very intuitive, very non-technical.
How much do you think lens choice reflects somebody's personality?
Obviously not much, because I don't really care too much about my lenses. But I think for some people it does. Like I think it's just one of those things where I just never have gone too deep into it. I always, like, photography was very much like a side thing for me as it started, and it almost feels like it still is, even though it's my full-time career now. I just kind of get a thing that gets the job done, and I've never kind of like indulged into going into the lenses and trying stuff with character and no character and this and that and swirly bokeh, and like I just haven't given it enough thought. So for me, it doesn't. I don't look at it. I don't look for it in other people to say, oh, his lens choices seem to kind of tell me a little bit about this person.
It doesn't matter what it is, but what's the lens you've used the most in your career?
A 24-70 f2.8. Yeah, both in different formats, like with Canon and then with Sony as well. Just because it just, a lot of times, I guess to give context, I'm shooting video and I'm just by myself with no help and trying to tell a full story, and it gets me wide enough and tight enough to get everything I need. So that's been on my camera the most.
Well, first of all, is the lens that fits the project the best. That makes the best lens. But I think the lens ideally will be fast enough to capture enough light for the project, and then have enough characteristics that would represent you as an artist and not just super clean, super clinical, and with no characteristic whatsoever. But unless that's who you are and that's who you want to shoot. So yeah, maybe that's the lens for you then.
And so what does that mean in terms of when you describe characteristics, what are you looking for when you're looking at it?
The flaws. Yeah, it's like every human, you know, if everybody have the exact same perfect everything, then you're pretty much a robot. But then is the little quirks that you have that makes who you are. And that, I think, same with lenses, is the barrel distortion, the chromatic aberration, the spherical aberration, you know, the vignetting, all that stuff. The way the bokeh swirl, maybe how the bokeh shape is, and yeah, that's all adds together, gives you a unique lens.
If you could name one single lens that's your favorite, like for photography.
Tamron 24-70 Mark 1 with the in-body stabilization, because it was cheap, it did everything the 24-70 needs to do, and it was image stabilized on Mark 1 when the Canon 24-70 was not image stabilized. And that thing went with me around the world. I'm pretty sure I dropped like 2 to 3 times. It's still chugging along. I will never sell that lens.
A great lens. Ooh, this has actually changed for me recently. I used to, like, back when I started, I used to think like, oh, big lenses, they look so cool. Like, people can just tell you're a photographer or a filmmaker. If you got that big lens on there, you look really professional. But recently, as I've started like traveling more and just like walking around a lot, I've really started to appreciate like a smaller lens. But I think I can't like sacrifice like quality or sharpness by having a smaller lens. If there's a noticeable difference, like in just like looking at an image and I don't have to like zoom in to see if there's a difference. Like if I look at an image and I see there's a difference between two lenses, I'm gonna go for the sharper one. But at the end of the day, I would be nice to have a small lens that's sharp. I've actually stopped caring about aperture as much. I used to like the 1.8, 1.4, but this lens actually I have on right here is 2.5. And I've really liked using this lens because it's small, sharp, great for traveling, and just overall pretty good. I like both primes and zooms. I can't say there's one I like more. It really depends on the situation or what I'm shooting. But the main things for me are sharpness, size if possible, and quality.
And what lens do you have on there right now?
This is the Sony 40mm f2.5. I actually got this one recently, and I've really been liking it just for like carrying around every day. It's super light, so I'm able to just like carry my camera and not have to worry about it being too heavy or too big.
What is your favorite lens of all time and why?
That's really tough. That's really tough, because I've been going wider slowly. I used to shoot really tight on like an 85, and this is a 40. But I would say I just got to go with good old 24-70, just because it's super versatile. Could do both photo and video on it. You can do street photography, portrait photography, even landscape. So you can kind of do a little bit of everything with that. And I think with my current style and not having like a specific thing that I go out and shoot constantly, it's good because it's really flexible.
You know, I love a lot of good like micro contrast from lenses. So a lot of older lenses, like the Helios lens that a lot of people use, just lenses with good character. I don't want stuff that's too sterile. So like no shade to Sony, but a lot of the G Master stuff is very like, it's like perfect. Like optically, there's nothing better than those lenses, right? I mean, I could be wrong with that, but I like Fuji, especially. Like a lot of their lenses have nice, just the way they render images. Also, the sensors too really help with that. But yeah, just lenses that kind of show something, and they have like a feeling to them. Like they have some sort of emotion behind, not just the actual sensor.
And so then how would you describe that emotion in terms of the characteristics of the lens? Like what is registering to you for that?
I think a lot of really good, like rich colors, nice highlights and shadows, like that kind of thing. And I think the sensor does have a lot to do with that, but the lenses also aid that too, because that's part of what's actually making the photo itself.
What's your favorite lens of all time?
Ooh, that's so tough. Lately, I think it's been the GFX, the 32 to 64 f4. Just because it hits right around like a 24 to 50 mil focal length, and that's kind of good for absolutely everything, especially with cars. You have the wide and you have like that medium on the lighter side of the telephoto end too. So I think lately that's been my favorite one, and then maybe the lock seal lenses from Sony too. They're like the manual focus film lenses.
I think like objectively it's got to be sharp enough. You know, like I understand like some lenses like, oh, like every lens has like character or some of them aren't sharp necessarily. But I think generally speaking, it has to be sharp enough to a certain point. Yeah. I've been really interested in a lot of lenses that have character, you know, like the Cook lenses or anything. Like I don't know too much about them, but I see it and I'm like, I love that look. But Nisi dropped a bunch and I was like, I do like that clean look too sometimes. I'm like, okay, that actually looks nice. Because you can always like add like, I don't know, like dehancer or like anything else to, you know, spice it up a bit. Yeah. Fast enough aperture, you know, like if I'm doing full frame, f2.8 is fine. Because f1.8 on a full frame is kind of like, you get one eye in focus and the other one's not in focus. Yeah. So I think it would be the 50 millimeter on a full frame equivalent, because I used the 35 mil on an APS-C sensor. That was probably my, like, that was my favorite lens, like shooting weddings, everything. I've shot entire videos just on a 35 mil on an APS-C, so 50 mil full frame.
I would say something that's not overly sharp and sterile, so something with a little bit of character. Slightly soft, because I really hate overly like sharp images. Slight blooms in the highlights and like gentle roll-offs into the shadows and highlights. I don't know if that's a lens thing or a sensor thing, but I feel that the lens does play a slight part in that. So how do the highlights bloom? You know, like how does that transition kind of look from light to dark? I think people spend too much time looking at photos of brick walls. Like most of us aren't shooting brick walls, right? So as long as it's like decently sharp, not like overly vignetted with like dark black spots, I think, you know, you're good.
But what's your favorite lens of all time? Best one you've ever used?
I'm a gear nerd, but I'm not super into lenses. Okay. So I would say, probably either the Sigma 50 Art or the 24 to 70.
From who?
Oh, from Canon. The EF, yeah.
Well, I'd say like my first thing that I would think of is like amount of light. So I would say the speed of the lenses. But then that being said, now that bodies have gotten really good and we can shoot at 3200 ISO, like native, now I care less about that. You know, somewhere around 2.8 is fine. I don't need to have the most wide open thing all the time. Then it makes it harder for the focus puller. It makes it harder for a lot of stuff. And then it doesn't necessarily even, like say you have a beautiful background, now you don't even see it when you're fully wide open. In terms of the characteristics, I don't know, like what would be a priority? Not the absolute sharpest, but somewhere just, you know, close to that, but not super sharp, because it just, though it's a really clean, sharp image, it just gives it like a soulless feel. Like sometimes those weird lenses with characteristics just feel nice. I don't know what it is. It's the color or something. Like some looks for a lens that's not too distorted or crazy, and then Hawk anamorphic. I can't remember which model specifically, but yeah, those are crazy, and I know they're expensive.
What's your favorite focal length?
Oh, I like, I don't know. I seem to do lots of B camera, and I'm on a 65 mil a lot. But I like, there's this one Hawk 140 mil. That's probably it.
I think there's two ways to see it. You can either have a lens with great characteristics, like nice vignetting, nice soft bokeh, weird bokeh, just a swirly, or you could have a super clinical lens, super sharp, no chromatic aberration, like no vignette, just a perfect sharp edge to edge frame, like full sharp lens. I don't have a preference necessarily, but day to day, I would prefer a more ultra clean look of a lens. No chromatic aberration is like a dream to have in a lens. So when it comes to my work in automotive editorial work, I kind of need the lens to be just really sharp. Like I want the whole thing to be like perfect. So because I notice a lot of my work gets printed at the end of the day, whether it's on billboards or whatnot. It's nice to know that that photo is clinically sharp from edge to edge. Favorite lens? Atlas, is it 40? Is it the 40 mil anamorphic? Beautiful. Just beautiful. It's completely the opposite of this, where just sharp, tack sharp and all that, but it's such a beautiful lens where aside from its weight, the way it looks is just stunning.
Bokeh is definitely something I really care about because like sometimes the modern lens, I think you and I like we used to talk about this. Like I don't really like the new lens look. A lot of the background is like they're good bokeh, but like there's no characteristic in there. So like that's why like sometimes I prefer like older lens. You know, like some like artifact like from the aperture, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. Like it's just make your image sense out. Favorite lens, I'm gonna say like my 35 mil 7 element. Yeah, the 35 f2. I think that was built in like the 90s. The bokeh is nice. King of bokeh. Yeah, that's what they say. So that's, and also the sides. It's this big.
Yeah.
Like this big. So like it's literally like when you put it on your Leica, then you are still able to just put it in your pocket. I wear cargo pants, so like my pants pocket it's good enough for that.
There are clearly two distinct preferences when it comes to lenses: a clean, sharp look or a soft, vintage look. Everyone I spoke to has taken the time to develop their taste enough to know what lenses they personally like and don't like, which is probably the hardest part about lens selection to begin with. So what truly makes a great lens? I think I can boil it down to something that inspires you every day to use it, and something that embodies the point of view that you want for your work. I think I expected more people to have niche lenses as their favorites, but instead I found an overall trend towards versatility. As for me, my favorite focal length is a 40mm with a vintage look, but I haven't found one that I truly love yet. Ideally, such a lens would have a distinct bokeh, a beautiful soft flare, very fast aperture, small size, probably manual focus, and it would perform consistently along the f-stop range. I didn't really plan for this, but I actually had a few instances where the Evolution Wireless saved me while doing these interviews. During my first interview, I got distracted catching up with my friend Oliver before the interview, and I forgot to check and lower the in-camera audio on my X-T4, and it came out slightly overmodulated. Mistakes happen, especially when you are shooting solo, and thankfully, because the SKP transmitter has 32-bit float recording to a micro SD card, I was able to replace the audio with no issues, and it sounded great. Shooting 10 interviews all over the city by myself while also making sure I was focused on the interviewees wasn't easy, but the Evolution Wireless system surprised me. It didn't skip a beat or present any issues despite the very short setup time I had between interviews and the varying environments I was in. My X-T4 doesn't even have a headphone jack, so being able to monitor audio off the receiver was very handy. It was pretty sweet that the SKP transmitter allowed me to use the legendary MKH416 XLR microphone wirelessly with a camera that does not natively support XLR microphones at all. Another cool feature is that Sennheiser includes their own battery with the kit, which lasts 7+ hours, but it also supports the use of AA batteries. So if you're ever in a pinch and you've forgotten to charge the battery, you always have an easy backup solution available. I didn't need it for this video, but the EW DP kit is also stackable, so you can run 2 receivers on top of each other if needed without taking up more space on your rig. You could even technically use the SKP transmitter standalone and record all of your audio off of this by itself if you're the kind of person who wants as simple and minimal a solution as possible. It even supports a 3.5mm lav mic input. If you shoot solo or in very small teams looking to upgrade beyond a 2.4 GHz microphone solution, you can find out more about the EW DP kit at the first link in the video description. Thank you to Sennheiser for making this video possible. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing the different answers as much as I did. I'd love to hear what your favorite lens is in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching.